The red sun of Vorthak Prime cast long shadows across the rocky wasteland. The air burned with acid rain while the ground shook from another earthquake. This was home to the Kethvar, and they loved every deadly moment of it. Commander Jackson stood on the observation deck of the military base. His 8-foot frame was covered in thick, dark armor plates that had grown from his own body. Sharp claws extended from his fingers as he watched younger Kethvar soldiers train in the courtyard below. They moved fast, despite the crushing gravity that would kill most other species in minutes. "Sir, the new recruits are ready for the trial," said Lieutenant Minho, approaching with quick steps. His own armor showed scars from many battles across the galaxy. Jackson turned his large head toward his officer. Yellow eyes glowed in his skull-like face. "Good. Send them to the deep canyons. If they survive 3 days against the shadow beasts, they can join the fleet." The deep canyons were death traps filled with creatures that could tear through metal. Most young Kethvar who entered never came back out, but those who did became perfect killing machines. This was the Kethvar way. Only the strongest survived, and only the strongest deserved to live. For over 500 years, the Kethvar Empire had spread across this part of the galaxy. They took worlds from weak aliens who lived on soft planets with gentle weather and calm skies. These pathetic creatures always surrendered quickly when they saw what evolution had done to the Kethvar. Jackson remembered his first conquest 20 years ago. The Volani people had lived on a world covered in blue grass and silver lakes. When Kethvar ships arrived, the Volani tried to fight back with their simple weapons. It had been like watching children play war games. The entire planet fell in 3 days. "Commander," Minho continued, "intelligence reports that long-range scouts have found something interesting in Sector 7749. "Another easy target?" Jackson asked, his mouth forming what passed for a smile among his people. "Unknown, sir. The scouts detected radio signals from a system with several planets. One planet shows signs of a large civilization. They seem to be actively sending messages into space." Jackson felt excitement build in his chest. New worlds meant new conquests. New conquests meant more proof that the Kethvar were the greatest species in the galaxy. "What kind of civilization?" "Preliminary scans suggest they call themselves humans. The planet appears to be mostly water with large land masses. The gravity reads as moderate, and the atmosphere shows high oxygen content. Very comfortable conditions." "Soft worlders," Jackson said with disgust. "Probably never had to fight for anything in their lives. Send a full reconnaissance fleet. I want to know everything about these humans before we crush them." The commander walked to his office, a chamber carved from solid rock deep inside the military complex. The walls were covered with trophies from defeated enemies. Alien weapons hung next to skulls from various species. Each item told the story of another world that had fallen to Kethvar might. At his desk, Jackson activated the communication system. The face of High War Chief Yuna appeared on the screen. Her armor was older and more scarred than his, showing decades of successful battles. "Commander," she said in the harsh Kethvar language, "I trust you have good news." "Yes, War Chief. We have discovered a new civilization in Sector 7749, a species called humans. Initial reports suggest they will provide little resistance." Yuna's eyes brightened. "Excellent! The Council has been growing restless. They want to see new territories added to the Empire. How many ships will you need?" "For soft worlders, a single battle group should be enough. Maybe less. Take 2 battle groups anyway. The Council wants this conquest to go smoothly." No mistakes like the Rathani campaign. Jackson winced slightly at the mention of the Rathani. That species had managed to destroy several Kethvar ships before their defeat. It had been embarrassing, even though the Kethvar still won in the end. Understood, War Chief. When do we depart? As soon as the reconnaissance report is complete. I want detailed information about their technology and population centers. Plan for total occupation within 1 standard cycle. The screen went dark and Jackson leaned back in his chair. 1 standard cycle was about 3 Earth months, though he did not know this yet. It seemed like plenty of time to conquer a species that had never known real hardship. Outside his window, he could see the training grounds where young Kethvar learned to become warriors. They fought each other with real weapons until someone was seriously injured. They learned to ignore pain by being exposed to the acid rain without protection. They practiced hunting the giant stone worms that lived in the planet's core tunnels. This was how real warriors were made, on a world that tried to kill you every day, where the weak died young and only the fierce survived. Jackson could not imagine how soft the humans must be, living on their comfortable planet with easy weather and calm environments. He thought about the other species the Kethvar had conquered. The Zephyrians had lived on a world with light gravity and sweet air. They had been so weak that Kethvar soldiers could barely touch them without breaking their fragile bones. The Aquari had spent their lives swimming in warm oceans, never learning to fight on land. The Stellari had built beautiful cities in the clouds, but their builders had no idea how to make weapons or armor. All of them had begged for mercy when the Kethvar ships arrived. All of them had offered to surrender their worlds without a fight, if only the Kethvar would spare their lives. And all of them now served the Empire as workers and servants, grateful to be allowed to live under Kethvar rule. The humans would be no different. How could they be? Their world sounded like paradise compared to Vorthak Prime. They probably spent their time making art and music instead of learning to fight. They likely had never seen real violence or faced real danger. Jackson activated his personal training program and headed to the combat chambers. Even as a commander, he trained every day. His body needed to stay sharp, his reflexes fast, his killing instincts keen. In 2 hours, he would fight against captured predators from the deep canyons. Yesterday, he had wrestled with a steel crusher, worm that could bite through starship hull plating. As he walked through the corridors, other Kethvar soldiers saluted him. They all looked forward to the new campaign. Conquest was in their blood, as natural as breathing. They lived for the moment when enemy resistance crumbled before their superior strength and speed. The thought of easy victory over the humans made Jackson feel good. It would be just another step in the Kethvar's march across the galaxy. Soon, every star system would bow before their power. Every weak species would serve their betters. After all, this was the natural order of things. The strong ruled and the weak served. The Kethvar had proven this truth on world after world, battle after battle. These humans would learn the same lesson that all the others had learned. The only question was how quickly they would surrender when they saw what real warriors looked like. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the reconnaissance ship Vorthak's Fury as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The human star system spread out before them on the main screen. 8 planets orbited a yellow star, with the 3rd planet showing clear signs of advanced civilization. Communications Officer Yuna, what are you picking up? Minho asked, settling into his command chair. The ship's artificial gravity was set to match their homeworld, making everything feel properly. Heavy, Yuna's clawed fingers moved across her control panel. Multiple radio frequencies, Captain. Very active. They seem to broadcast constantly across their entire planet. Military communications? Unknown, sir. The signals are strange. Much of it appears to be entertainment. Yuna's voice carried confusion. They broadcast moving pictures with sound, stories that seem to be fictional, and music, lots of music. Minho exchanged glances with his first officer, Lieutenant Taiho. In Kethvar society, communications were used for military coordination, resource management, and conquest planning. The idea of using radio waves for entertainment seemed wasteful and soft. "Show me their planet," Minho ordered. The main screen focused on the third world. It was mostly blue and white, with brown and green land masses visible through swirling clouds. No red skies or acid rain, no obvious volcanic activity. It looked almost disturbingly peaceful. "Gravity?" he asked. "0.98 standard units, Captain. Very close to what these humans would consider normal. Atmosphere? Breathable for them, though the oxygen content is higher than most worlds we've encountered. 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen." Minho nodded. "High oxygen made worlds more dangerous due to fire risk, but these humans had probably adapted to it over time. Still, it was much gentler than Vorthak Prime's toxic mix of gases. Population estimates? Science Officer Suman, one of the few females on the ship, looked up from her station. "Difficult to determine exactly, Captain, but based on energy usage, radio emissions, and visible city lights, we estimate several billion individuals." Billions. Taiho whistled low. "That's a massive population. They must have very efficient resource management." "Or very abundant resources," Minho replied. "Show me their cities." The screen zoomed in on the night side of the planet. Thousands of bright spots covered the land masses. The cities were huge, sprawling complexes that showed no obvious defensive structures. No massive walls, no weapon emplacements that they could detect from orbit. "They seem very trusting," Suman observed. "No visible military preparations." Yuna held up one clawed hand. "Captain, I'm intercepting something interesting. The humans appear to have some kind of entertainment where they fight each other, but not seriously. They follow rules and stop before anyone dies." "Sports," Taiho said, recognizing the concept from other conquered species. "Ritualized combat for amusement, usually found in very peaceful societies." Minho studied the data streaming across his screens. Everything pointed to a soft, comfortable civilization that had never known real hardship. Their planet was stable, their resources abundant, their entertainment focused on non-lethal competition. It seemed almost too easy. "Captain," the navigation officer called out, "we're detecting artificial structures in orbit around their planet." "Defensive. Platforms? Unknown. They appear to be large. Very large. Some kind of manufacturing or research facilities, perhaps." Minho frowned. Orbital construction required significant technology and resources. Perhaps these humans were more advanced than their peaceful broadcasts suggested. Weapons scans? Difficult to determine from this distance, sir. The structures are certainly large enough to house significant weapon systems, but we're not detecting obvious military energy signatures. Communications? Any military channels? Yuna listened to her equipment for several minutes. "Some encrypted channels that might be military, Captain. But most of their communications seem to be civilian. They broadcast news, entertainment, educational programs. They even send signals to their orbital structures that appear to be supply requests and shift schedules. Shift schedules? Yes, sir. As if people work up there and rotate back to the planet regularly. This was becoming more interesting. Routine travel between planet and orbit suggested a very advanced, space-capable civilization. Most species the HFY had conquered could barely manage simple satellites. Science officer, analyze their technology level based on what we're observing. Suman worked at her station for several minutes before responding. Captain, they appear to have mastered nuclear power, advanced electronics, and routine space travel. Their orbital structures suggest they can move significant amounts of material off their planet's surface. But still no obvious military preparations? None. That we can detect, sir. Though... She paused. Captain, some of their orbital structures are quite large enough to house significant populations or industrial capacity. Minho considered this information. A species advanced enough for major orbital construction, but peaceful enough to broadcast entertainment constantly across open frequencies. It was an unusual combination. Deploy a scanning probe, he ordered. I want detailed information about their technology and defenses before we report back to command. Yes, sir. Launching probe now. A small, stealthy probe separated from their ship and began moving toward the human system. It would take several hours to reach the inner planets and begin detailed scans. Captain, Yuna said, should I attempt to decode more of their communications? I might be able to learn about their government and military structure. Do it. I want to understand what kind of resistance we might face. As the hours passed, more information came in. The humans had unified their planet under some kind of loose confederation of nation-states. They had explored their own star system extensively, with active operations on several other planets and moons. They seemed to have unlimited energy sources and sophisticated manufacturing. But their entertainment broadcasts continued to suggest a peaceful, soft civilization. They made fictional stories about impossible adventures and sang songs about love and friendship. Their news programs discussed weather, economics, and political debates that seemed to be resolved through talking rather than fighting. Captain, Tai-Ho said quietly, this doesn't feel right. No species this advanced should be this soft. Where are their warriors, their battle songs, their conquest stories? Minho had been thinking the same thing. In HFY society, advanced technology went hand in hand with military might. You needed weapons to protect your resources and soldiers to use those weapons. But these humans seem to have advanced technology without the warrior culture that should accompany it. Perhaps they evolved differently, he suggested. Maybe their world never taught them to fight. Or maybe they're hiding something, Tai-Ho replied. The probe reached the outer edge of the human system and began transmitting detailed sensor data. The information was surprising. The humans had substantial industrial operations throughout their star system. They were mining asteroids, collecting solar energy, and had established permanent bases on multiple worlds. Captain, Suman called out, the probe is detecting some kind of patrol craft near the asteroid belt. Military. Unknown, sir. The energy signatures are unusual. They appear to be modified industrial vessels rather than purpose-built warships. Show by me. The screen displayed a small craft moving between asteroids. It looked crude compared to HFY military vessels, but it was heavily built and appeared to carry significant equipment. Captain, the probe operator announced, we're getting detailed scans now. The human orbital structures are definitely industrial and research facilities. But, sir, the size and scope are remarkable. They've essentially industrialized their entire star system. Minho stared at the data. A species that could industrialize an entire star system was not soft, regardless of how peaceful their broadcasts seemed. Something about this situation was not adding up. "Continue monitoring," he ordered. "I want to know everything about these humans before we proceed." Admiral Heian sat in the command center of Luna Base, Earth's primary space defense facility. Built deep inside the moon's rocky surface, the base monitored everything that moved in the Sol system. When the automated sensors detected an unknown object entering the outer system, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. "Admiral, we have an unidentified probe moving toward the inner system," reported Lieutenant Commander Sora from her position at the tracking station. "It's small, roughly 2 meters long, and it's scanning everything it passes." Heian studied the data on his main screen. The probe moved with purpose, clearly intelligent and controlled. Its scanning patterns showed advanced technology and sophisticated sensors. This was not space debris or a natural object. "Where did it come from?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. It appeared at the edge of sensor range, moving at significant velocity. No sign of the launch platform." "Communications Officer Dongmin, any signals from the probe?" "Negative, Admiral. It's receiving data but not transmitting anything we can detect." Heian considered the situation. First contact protocols had been established decades ago when humanity first ventured beyond their own star system. The discovery of alien life was always possible, and now it seemed that moment had arrived. "General Wubin, what's the status of the defense grid?" General Wubin looked up from his tactical display. "All systems green, Admiral. The orbital platforms are ready, and we have interceptor squadrons on standby." "I don't want to start a war over a probe," Heian said. "But I also don't want unknown aliens scanning our homeworld without permission. Sora, take a squadron and capture that probe. Non-destructive methods only." "Yes, sir," Sora replied, heading for the launch bay. Within minutes, 6 interceptor craft launched from Luna Base. Each ship was sleek and fast, designed for operations throughout the Sol system. Lieutenant Commander Sora led the formation in her personal craft, modified with the latest sensor and capture equipment. "Probe bearing 27 Mark IV, distance approximately 50,000 kilometers and closing on Earth," came the report from Luna Base. "Roger, Control. We have visual contact." Sora could see the alien probe on her screen. It was angular and dark, clearly built by non-human intelligence. The design was practical but foreign, unlike anything in human technology databases. "This is Interceptor 1 to all units. Deploy capture nets on my mark. Remember, we want this thing intact." The human interceptors moved with practiced precision. They had trained for this scenario countless times, though always hoping they would never need to use the skills. The probe seemed unaware of their approach, continuing its systematic scanning of Earth's orbital space. "Deploy nets? Now!" Electromagnetic capture nets shot out from 3 different interceptors, surrounding the alien probe in a web of energy. The probe immediately tried to change course, but the nets held firm. Its engines fired, but human technology was designed for capturing runaway asteroids and damaged spacecraft. The probe was not going anywhere. "Probe captured," Sora reported. "Engines have shut down. No sign of self-destruct mechanisms." "Excellent work, Commander. Bring it to Dock 7 for analysis." Back on Vorthak's Fury, Captain Minho watched his probe's telemetry disappear from his screens. The human response had been faster and more coordinated than expected. Within minutes of entering their inner system, the probe had been detected, intercepted, and captured. "Captain, Yuna reported. The humans captured our probe with some kind of energy net. Very sophisticated technology. Did they destroy it? No, sir. They captured it intact. They seem to want to study it rather than simply eliminate it. Minho frowned. Most species either ignored scanning probes or destroyed them immediately. Capturing one suggested confidence in their ability to handle unknown technology safely. "Show me the capture," he ordered. The screen replayed the probe's final transmissions. 6 small craft had appeared and surrounded the probe with coordinated precision. Their movements showed military training and advanced equipment. These were not the actions of a soft, peaceful species. Those ships moved like military interceptors, Lieutenant Tejo observed. Professional coordination and advanced tactics. Science Officer Suman, analysis of their capture technology. The energy nets appear to use electromagnetic fields to create physical barriers, Suman replied. Very advanced application of physics. The power requirements alone suggest significant energy generation capability. On Luna Base, Dr. Nari led the team examining the captured probe in a secure facility. The alien technology was clearly advanced, though built using different principles than human engineering. "The hull material is some kind of composite I've never seen," she reported to Admiral Hyan. "Very strong but lightweight. The sensor array is remarkably sophisticated." "Any obvious weapons?" "None detected. This appears to be purely a reconnaissance device. Very advanced reconnaissance, but not armed." "What about its origin?" "Based on the engine design and fuel residue, it came from outside our star system. Definitely alien technology." Admiral Hyan studied the probe through the observation window. Humanity's first contact with alien intelligence, and it came in the form of a spy satellite. That suggested the aliens were cautious, but also potentially hostile. "Doctor, how long to reverse engineer their technology?" "Months, maybe years for the advanced systems. But Admiral, I'm more concerned about what this probe was looking for. The scanning patterns suggest they were mapping our defenses and industrial capacity." That was troubling news. Reconnaissance probes usually meant someone was planning an invasion. The question was whether humanity should wait for the aliens to make the next move or take the initiative. Communications. Prepare a message for transmission. "Along the probe's origin vector," Hyan ordered. "If someone sent this probe to study us, they should know we're willing to talk." "What kind of message, sir?" "Standard first contact protocol. Mathematical concepts, peaceful intentions, basic information about humanity, but also make sure they understand we detected and captured their probe easily. On Vorthak's Fury, intelligence analyst Tejo studied every detail of the probe's capture. The more he learned about human capabilities, the more concerned he became. "Captain, the humans demonstrated several troubling capabilities," he reported to Minho. "Their detection systems are very sensitive. Their response time was extremely fast. Their capture technology is more advanced than expected." "But they didn't destroy the probe," Minho pointed out. "That suggests they preferred diplomacy to immediate violence. Or they're confident they can handle whatever we send at them," Tejo countered. "Sir, I recommend extreme caution. These humans are not what they appear to be." "Explain." "Their entertainment broadcasts suggest a peaceful, soft civilization. But their response to our probe was purely military. Fast, coordinated, professional. They have extensive orbital infrastructure, advanced technology, and sophisticated defense systems. This combination doesn't match our previous experience with soft worlders." Captain Minho considered this analysis. Every other species the Kethvar had encountered fell into predictable categories. Warrior species had warrior cultures. Advanced species had obvious military preparations. Peaceful species had minimal defenses. But these humans seemed to be peaceful, and advanced and well-defended all at the same time. It was an unusual combination that didn't fit established patterns. "Continue monitoring their communications," Minho ordered. "I want to understand what kind of species we're dealing with before we report back to command." "Yes, sir. But, Captain, I think we should be prepared for the possibility that these humans are more dangerous than they appear." Director Suman called the emergency meeting to order in the secure conference room beneath Geneva. Representatives from every major Earth government sat around the circular table, while holographic displays showed Admiral Hyan and General Wubin broadcasting from Luna Base. "Ladies and gentlemen," Suman began, 3 days ago we captured our first confirmed alien probe. Today we decide how humanity responds to this historic moment. Dr. Nari activated her presentation, showing detailed scans of the Kethvar probe. "The technology is definitely non-human origin. Advanced materials, sophisticated sensors, and engine design unlike anything in our databases. More importantly, the scanning patterns suggest they were mapping our industrial and military capabilities." "Military capabilities?" asked Ambassador Dongmin from the Korean delegation. "That sounds like preparation for invasion." "Possibly," Admiral Hyan replied from Luna Base. "But we shouldn't assume hostile intent yet. This could be simple caution on their part." General Wubin disagreed. "Admiral, with respect, reconnaissance is typically the first step in military planning. Someone sent that probe to study our defenses. We need to be ready for whatever comes next." Director Suman nodded. "Which brings us to our response options. We can ignore the probe and wait for further contact. We can send a response message, or we can take more active measures." "What kind of response message?" asked the representative. "From Brazil." "Standard first contact protocol," Dr. Nari explained. "Mathematical concepts to prove intelligence, basic information about humanity, peaceful intentions. The message would be transmitted back along the probe's origin vector." "And active measures?" pressed the delegate from Nigeria. General Wubin leaned forward on the screen. "Full military readiness, activate all defense platforms, recall deep space patrols, prepare for potential invasion. We have protocols in place for exactly this scenario." "That seems like escalation," warned the representative from Japan. "If these aliens are peaceful, military preparation might be seen as aggressive. If they're hostile, being unprepared might mean extinction," Wubin replied grimly. Admiral Hyan spoke up from Luna Base. "I recommend a balanced approach. Send the diplomatic message but also quietly prepare our defenses. We can be ready for war while hoping for peace." Director Suman looked around the table. "All in favor of sending a response message?" Every hand went up. Whatever these aliens wanted, communication was better than silence. All in favor of defensive preparations? Again, unanimous agreement. Humanity had not survived this long by being careless. 2 hours later, the most important message in human history began transmission toward the edge of the Sol system. The broadcast used focused gravitational waves, a technology that required massive energy generation and precise control of space-time itself. Dr. Nari had crafted the message carefully. It started with mathematical concepts that any intelligent species would recognize: prime numbers, geometric relationships, basic physics constants. Then came simple images showing Earth, humans, and peaceful activities. Finally, the message: included basic information about human technology and an invitation for direct communication. What the humans didn't realize was that the transmission method itself sent a much stronger message than the content. Gravitational wave communication required mastery of fundamental forces that most species considered theoretical physics. It demonstrated casual control over forces that could tear apart planets. On Vorthak's Fury, Communications Officer Yuna detected the incoming transmission and immediately called for Captain Minho. "Captain, the humans are responding to our probe with some kind of directed transmission." "Show me," Minho ordered, taking his position on the bridge. "Sir, this is unusual. They're using gravitational waves as a communication medium." "Lieutenant?" Tejo looked up sharply from his station. "Gravitational waves? That's advanced physics, very advanced." The message itself appeared on the main screen as Yuna decoded it. Mathematical concepts, peaceful imagery, basic information about human civilization, standard first contact protocol that the Kethvar had seen from other species. But science. Officer Sumin was studying the transmission method with growing alarm. "Captain, do you understand what they just did?" she asked quietly. "They sent us a message," Minho replied. "They manipulated space-time to send us a message. Sir, gravitational wave generation requires massive energy expenditure and incredibly precise control of fundamental forces. The power requirements alone are staggering." "Meaning?" "Meaning these humans have energy sources and technological capabilities far beyond what their peaceful broadcasts suggested. You don't develop gravitational wave communication unless you have thorough mastery of physics and unlimited energy. Generation." Captain Minho stared at the decoded message. The content was peaceful and welcoming, but the method of delivery suggested technological capabilities that made him very uncomfortable. "Could this be a threat?" he asked. "I don't think so, sir. The message content is clearly peaceful, but the delivery method demonstrates capabilities that would make these humans very dangerous enemies." Intelligence analyst Taiho had been studying both the message content and the transmission data. "Captain, I need to point out something else. They responded within hours of capturing our probe. That suggests they have extensive first contact protocols already in place." So that means they've been expecting to encounter alien species. They've prepared for this moment. Most species we've conquered had never even considered the possibility of alien contact. On Lunabase, General Wubin was coordinating humanity's defensive preparations. The message to the aliens had been sent, but Earth's military forces were taking no chances. "Status report," he ordered. "All orbital defense platforms are online and fully armed," reported his aide. "Deep space patrol squadrons have been recalled and are taking defensive positions. Ground-based installations are at full readiness. Industrial output? All military manufacturing facilities have been placed on emergency production schedules. Asteroid mining operations are prioritizing materials for defense construction." Good. What about the civilian population? No general announcement yet, as per Director Suman's orders, but emergency services and key infrastructure are on high alert. Admiral Hyon joined the discussion from the command center. "General, I want to emphasize that this is preparation, not provocation. If these aliens are monitoring our communications, they need to see that we're capable of defending ourselves but not actively aggressive." "Understood, Admiral. But if they come in shooting, I want humanity to be ready." Dr. Nari was leading a team of scientists in studying every detail of the alien probe. The more they learned, the more questions arose. "The metallurgy is fascinating," she explained to her research team. much stronger than our materials, but achieved through completely different processes. Their electronics use principles we've never seen before." "What does that tell us about their capabilities?" asked one of the researchers. "They're definitely advanced, but in different directions than us. We focused on energy generation and gravitational manipulation. They seem to have emphasized material science and sensor technology. Are they more advanced than us?" "Different. Not necessarily better. We have capabilities they probably don't expect, and they have capabilities that surprise us." On Vorthax, Fury, Captain Minho made his decision. The information he had gathered about the humans was too important and too concerning to delay reporting to command. "Communications. Prepare a priority transmission to Fleet Command," he ordered. "Yes, sir. Message ready. Report that we have made contact with a species called humans in Sector 7749. They demonstrate advanced technology including gravitational, wave communication, and sophisticated orbital infrastructure. They captured our reconnaissance probe easily and responded with apparent peaceful intentions. However, their technological capabilities suggest they would be formidable opponents if hostilities develop. Should I recommend invasion, Captain?" Minho paused before answering. Everything about these humans contradicted Kethvar experience with other species. They seemed peaceful, but were clearly prepared for war. They lived on a gentle world, but had mastered dangerous technologies. Recommend extreme caution and further study before any military action, he finally said. These humans are not what they appear to be. Intelligence analyst Taiho worked through the night in his quarters aboard the reconnaissance ship. The reports from Commander Jackson's failed raid had shaken the entire fleet, but Taiho was determined to understand what they were really facing. He pulled up every piece of data they had collected about the humans and began a systematic analysis. The entertainment broadcasts had been their first clue about human society. Now Taiho studied them with new understanding. What had seemed like evidence of a soft, peaceful species took on a different meaning after the mining station battle. Computer, analyze human entertainment for references to combat and warfare, he ordered. The results were stunning. Human entertainment was filled with stories about fighting, war, and conflict. Movies about military campaigns, television shows about police and soldiers, games that simulated combat scenarios. Even their sports involved physical contact and competition that would be considered violent by most species standards. But there was something else. The humans seemed to enjoy these stories about conflict. They created them for entertainment, not as warnings or historical records. Taiho pulled up a human program called Military History Documentaries. What he found made his blood run cold. Human warfare was unlike anything in the Kethvar experience. Species that the Kethvar had conquered typically fought until they faced superior force, then surrendered. Rational beings avoided unnecessary casualties and preserved their populations. Humans fought differently. They had something called total war, where entire civilizations mobilized every resource for conflict. They had fought wars that lasted for years, even decades, continuing to battle long after rational species would have negotiated peace. Computer, analyze human military history for casualty figures, Taiho requested. The numbers were horrifying. Humans had fought wars that killed millions of their own people, not conquered populations or enemy species, but their own kind. And they had continued fighting even when the casualties reached levels that would have broken the spirit of any other species. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. Human warfare had driven technological development at an incredible pace. They had gone from simple gunpowder weapons to nuclear bombs in just a few centuries. War wasn't just something humans engaged in occasionally. It was the engine that drove their entire technological advancement. Taiho found references to something called the Manhattan Project, where humans had developed weapons capable of destroying entire cities. They had created these weapons in just a few years, working with desperate intensity while already engaged in a global war. Then he found something that made him call for Captain Minho immediately. "Captain, you need to see this," Taiho said when Minho arrived in the intelligence section. "What have you found?" "Sir, the humans have been studying their own planet's history and have classified Earth as what they call a death world." "What?" Taiho brought up the relevant data on his screen. According to human scientific analysis, their own planet is considered unusually hostile to life by galactic standards. They've categorized it as a high-gravity, high-oxygen, geologically unstable world with extreme weather patterns and aggressive native species. Captain Minho stared at the information. "But we scanned their world. It looked like paradise compared to most planets we've seen." "That's exactly the point, sir. If Earth is what humans consider a hostile environment, what does that say about their species' evolution?" The implications were staggering. The Kethvar had evolved on Vorthak Prime, which was genuinely one of the most hostile worlds in the galaxy. But they had always assumed that other species evolved on gentler worlds because they were weaker. What if humans had evolved on a world almost as hostile as Vorthak Prime, but their definition of hostile was different from the Kethvar understanding? "Show me more about their planet," Minho ordered. Taiho pulled up geological data that the humans had broadcast as part of their scientific communications. Earth experienced regular earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, massive storms, and climate variations that would devastate most civilizations. "Look at this, Captain. Humans regularly experience what they call natural disasters. Hurricanes with winds over 200 kilometers per hour, earthquakes that can level cities, volcanic eruptions that affect global climate, and they just rebuild and continue living in the same dangerous areas." "Why would they do that?" "Because they consider it normal, sir. This is what they evolved with. To them, a world without regular natural disasters would probably seem unnaturally stable. But the most shocking discovery was still to come. Taiho had found human scientific studies about their own evolution, and the results challenged everything the Kethvar thought they knew about species development. "Captain, humans evolved as what they call persistence hunters. They didn't develop claws or armor or natural weapons like most predatory species. Instead, they developed the ability to chase prey across vast distances until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. That's unusual. It gets worse, sir, or better, depending on your perspective. Human psychology evolved to find pursuit and challenge exciting rather than terrifying. They actively seek out dangerous situations for what they call adrenaline rushes." Minho studied the data with growing alarm. "Are you telling me that humans are naturally attracted to danger?" "Yes, sir. They engage in activities purely for excitement that would be considered survival training on other worlds. They jump out of aircraft for entertainment. They climb mountains and explore deep caves for fun. They race vehicles at high speeds and compete in physical combat sports." "Sports that involve real combat?" "Multiple varieties, sir. They have sports where they hit each other with padded clubs, sports where they try to knock each other unconscious with their bare hands, and sports where they tackle each other while running at full speed." Captain Minho sat down heavily in a chair. "Taiho, are you certain about this information?" I've cross-referenced it with multiple sources, sir. This isn't propaganda or fiction. This is how humans actually live. Then Commander Jackson was right about one thing, Minho said slowly. These humans do enjoy fighting, but he was wrong about why that makes them dangerous. Sir? Jackson thought they were dangerous because they weren't afraid to fight. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is that they've spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to win fights against opponents that should have been stronger than them. Tai-Ho brought up more data about human evolution. Look at this, Captain. Early humans hunted animals that were larger, stronger, and faster than they were. Giant predators, massive herbivores, creatures with natural weapons and armor. And humans not only survived but drove many of these species to extinction. How? Intelligence, cooperation, and absolute refusal to give up. They would chase a mammoth for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. They would work together to bring down predators that could kill any individual human easily. And they developed increasingly sophisticated tools and weapons to overcome physical disadvantages. Tools and weapons, Minho repeated thoughtfully. Yes, sir. And that brings us to the most disturbing part of human development. They've been at war with each other almost continuously throughout their recorded history. They've had thousands of years of practice in developing better ways to fight and kill. Tai-Ho pulled up human military development timelines. In just the last century, they've gone from simple chemical explosives to nuclear weapons to kinetic bombardment systems. Their military technology development never stops. And now they've industrialized their entire star system, Minho added, understanding the implications. Exactly, sir. A species that enjoys combat, refuses to surrender, and has spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare now has unlimited energy sources and industrial capacity. They can probably build weapons and ships faster than we can destroy them. Captain Minho stood up and began pacing. Tai-Ho, I want you to prepare a complete intelligence report. Everything we've learned about human capabilities, psychology, and potential threats. I'm calling an emergency conference with all ship commanders. Yes, sir. But, Captain, there's one more thing you should know. What? The mining station battle. I don't think those miners were military personnel at all. Based on their communications and behavior, they appear to have been actual civilian miners who fought off our strike force using improvised weapons and industrial equipment. The implications of this final revelation hit Captain Minho like a physical blow. If civilian humans with mining equipment could defeat trained Kethvar warriors, what would happen when they faced actual human military forces? Prepare that report, immediately, he ordered. And Tai-Ho? Yes, sir. Recommend that Fleet Command reconsider any plans for invasion. We may have found the one species in the galaxy that's more dangerous than we are. Intelligence analyst Tai-Ho worked through the night in his quarters aboard the reconnaissance ship. The reports from Commander Jackson's failed raid had shaken the entire fleet, but Tai-Ho was determined to understand what they were really facing. He pulled up every piece of data they had collected about the humans and began a systematic analysis. The entertainment broadcasts had been their first clue about human society. Now Tai-Ho studied them with new understanding. What had seemed like evidence of a soft, peaceful species took on a different meaning after the mining station battle. Computer, analyze human entertainment for references to combat and warfare, he ordered. The results were stunning. Human entertainment was filled with stories about fighting, war, and conflict. Movies about military campaigns, television shows about police and soldiers, games that simulated combat scenarios. Even their sports involved physical contact and competition that would be considered violent by most species standards. But there was something else. The humans seemed to enjoy these stories about conflict. They created them for entertainment, not as warnings or historical records. Taiho pulled up a human program called Military History Documentaries. What he found made his blood run cold. Human warfare was unlike anything in the Kethvar experience. Species that the Kethvar had conquered typically fought until they faced superior force, then surrendered. Rational beings avoided unnecessary casualties and preserved their populations. Humans fought differently. They had something called total war, where entire civilizations mobilized every resource for conflict. They had fought wars that lasted for years, even decades, continuing to battle long after rational species would have negotiated peace. Computer, analyze human military history for casualty figures, Taiho requested. The numbers were horrifying. Humans had fought wars that killed millions of their own people, not conquered populations or enemy species, but their own kind. And they had continued fighting even when the casualties reached levels that would have broken the spirit of any other species. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. Human warfare had driven technological development at an incredible pace. They had gone from simple gunpowder weapons to nuclear bombs in just a few centuries. War wasn't just something humans engaged in occasionally. It was the engine that drove their entire technological advancement. Taiho found references to something called the Manhattan Project, where humans had developed weapons capable of destroying entire cities. They had created these weapons in just a few years, working with desperate intensity while already engaged in a global war. Then he found something that made him call for Captain Minho immediately. "Captain, you need to see this," Taiho said when Minho arrived in the intelligence section. "What have you found?" "Sir, the humans have been studying their own planet's history and have classified Earth as what they call a death world." "What?" Taiho brought up the relevant data on his screen. According to human scientific analysis, their own planet is considered unusually hostile to life by galactic standards. They've categorized it as a high-gravity, high-oxygen, geologically unstable world with extreme weather patterns and aggressive native species. Captain Minho stared at the information. "But we scanned their world. It looked like paradise compared to most planets we've seen." "That's exactly the point, sir. If Earth is what humans consider a hostile environment, what does that say about their species' evolution?" The implications were staggering. The Kethvar had evolved on Vorthak Prime, which was genuinely one of the most hostile worlds in the galaxy. But they had always assumed that other species evolved on gentler worlds because they were weaker. What if humans had evolved on a world almost as hostile as Vorthak Prime, but their definition of hostile was different from the Kethvar understanding? "Show me more about their planet," Minho ordered. Taiho pulled up geological data that the humans had broadcast as part of their scientific communications. Earth experienced regular earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, massive storms, and climate variations that would devastate most civilizations. "Look at this, Captain. Humans regularly experience what they call natural disasters. Hurricanes with winds over 200 kilometers per hour, earthquakes that can level cities, volcanic eruptions that affect global climate, and they just rebuild and continue living in the same dangerous areas." "Why would they do that?" "Because they consider it normal, sir. This is what they evolved with. To them, a world without regular natural disasters would probably seem unnaturally stable. But the most shocking discovery was still to come. Taiho had found human scientific studies about their own evolution, and the results challenged everything the Kethvar thought they knew about species development. "Captain, Humans evolved as what they call persistence hunters. They didn't develop claws or armor or natural weapons like most predatory species. Instead, they developed the ability to chase prey across vast distances until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. That's unusual. It gets worse, sir, or better, depending on your perspective. Human psychology evolved to find pursuit and challenge exciting rather than terrifying. They actively seek out dangerous situations for what they call adrenaline rushes. Minho studied the data with growing alarm. Are you telling me that humans are naturally attracted to danger? Yes, sir. They engage in activities purely for excitement that would be considered survival training on other worlds. They jump out of aircraft for entertainment. They climb mountains and explore deep caves for fun. They race vehicles at high speeds and compete in physical combat sports. Sports that involve real combat? Multiple varieties, sir. They have sports where they hit each other with padded clubs, sports where they try to knock each other unconscious with their bare hands, and sports where they tackle each other while running at full speed. Captain Minho sat down heavily in a chair. Taiho, are you certain about this information? I've cross-referenced it with multiple sources, sir. This isn't propaganda or fiction. This is how humans actually live. Then Commander Jackson was right about one thing, Minho said slowly. These humans do enjoy fighting, but he was wrong about why that makes them dangerous. Sir? Jackson thought they were dangerous because they weren't afraid to fight. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is that they've spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to win fights against opponents that should have been stronger than them. Taiho brought up more data about human evolution. Look at this, Captain. Early humans hunted animals that were larger, stronger, and faster than they were. Giant predators, massive herbivores, creatures with natural weapons and armor. And humans not only survived but drove many of these species to extinction. How? Intelligence, cooperation, and absolute refusal to give up. They would chase a mammoth for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. They would work together to bring down predators that could kill any individual human easily. And they developed increasingly sophisticated tools and weapons to overcome physical disadvantages. Tools and weapons, Minho repeated thoughtfully. Yes, sir? And that brings us to the most disturbing part of human development. They've been at war with each other almost continuously throughout their recorded history. They've had thousands of years of practice in developing better ways to fight and kill. Taiho pulled up human military development timelines. In just the last century, they've gone from simple chemical explosives to nuclear weapons to kinetic bombardment systems. Their military technology development never stops. And now they've industrialized their entire star system, Minho added, understanding the implications. Exactly, sir. A species that enjoys combat, refuses to surrender, and has spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare now has unlimited energy sources and industrial capacity. They can probably build weapons and ships faster than we can destroy them. Captain Minho stood up and began pacing. Taiho, I want you to prepare a complete intelligence report. Everything we've learned about human capabilities, psychology, and potential threats. I'm calling an emergency conference with all ship commanders. Yes, sir. But, Captain, there's one more thing you should know. What? The mining station battle. I don't think those miners were military personnel at all. Based on their communications and behavior, they appear to have been actual civilian miners who fought off our strike force using improvised weapons and industrial equipment. The implications of this final revelation hit Captain Minho like a physical blow. If civilian humans with mining equipment could defeat trained HFY warriors, what would happen when they faced actual human military forces? Prepare that report, immediately, he ordered. And Taiho? Yes, sir. Recommend that Fleet Command reconsider any plans for invasion. We may have found the one species in the galaxy that's more dangerous than we are. Captain Minho's diplomatic ship approached Earth under a flag of truce, broadcasting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. After weeks of debate among the HFY command structure, they had decided that direct communication was better than stumbling into a war they might not be able to win. The human response had been swift and professional. Admiral Hyon himself had authorized the meeting, with Earth's best diplomats and xenopsychologists standing ready. Ambassador Dongmin led the human delegation, supported by Marine Colonel Inha and Dr. Nari from the xenobiology team. The meeting took place aboard a neutral space station that humans had constructed specifically for the occasion. The artificials. Gravity was set to a compromise between human and HFY preferences, though the aliens still seemed more comfortable in the higher gravity sections. Captain Minho entered the meeting room with Communications Officer Yuna and Cultural Analyst Sora. The humans were smaller than expected, but moved with a confidence that reminded Minho of veteran soldiers. Ambassador Dongmin stood to greet them with what appeared to be a peaceful gesture. "Welcome to Sol Station," Dongmin said through the translation device. "I am Ambassador Dongmin, representing the Earth Confederation. We appreciate your willingness to meet. I am Captain Minho of the HFY Reconnaissance Fleet," Minho replied. "We come seeking understanding between our species." The preliminary exchanges went smoothly. Both sides shared basic information about their governments, cultures, and peaceful intentions. But Minho couldn't shake the feeling that the humans were studying his team as carefully as the HFY were studying them. "Captain Minho," Ambassador Dongmin said during a break in the formal proceedings, "our scientists are curious about your homeworld. Would you be willing to share some information about HFY evolution and culture?" Of course. "We evolved on Vorthak Prime, a world that taught us strength through adversity. High gravity, toxic atmosphere, dangerous predators. Only the strong survive, and the strong deserve to rule." Dr. Nari leaned forward with interest. "That sounds like a very challenging environment. How did your species adapt?" Communications Officer Yuna answered with obvious pride. "We developed natural armor, enhanced reflexes, superior strength. We learned to fight because our world demanded fighters." "Fascinating," Dr. Nari replied. "And this led to your expansion across the galaxy?" "We bring order to chaos," Captain Minho explained. "Species that evolved on soft worlds lack the strength to govern themselves properly. The HFY provide guidance and protection." Colonel Inha, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "Protection from what threats?" "From themselves, mostly. Soft species are naturally weak and indecisive. They need strong leadership to achieve their potential." There was a moment of silence before Ambassador Dongmin asked, "Captain, what do you consider a soft world?" "Worlds with gentle weather, low gravity, abundant resources. Places where species never learned to fight for survival." Cultural analyst Sora noticed the expressions on the human faces and asked, "Is something wrong?" Dr. Nari exchanged glances with her colleagues before responding. "Captain, how would you classify Earth based on what you've observed?" "Earth is clearly a soft world," Minho answered without hesitation. "Moderate gravity, breathable atmosphere, stable weather patterns, abundant water. Your species has had an easy existence compared to most. The humans looked at each other with something that might have been amusement. Captain, Ambassador Dongmin said carefully, would you be interested in learning how humans classify planetary habitability? Of course. Dr. Nari activated a holographic display showing the galactic standard for planetary classification. We've had extensive contact with other species through long-range communications and have developed a comprehensive system for rating world habitability. The display showed various categories from paradise through habitable to hostile, and finally, deathworld. Earth, Dr. Nari continued, rates as a Class 12 deathworld according to galactic standards. Captain Minho stared at the display. That's impossible. We scanned your world. It's clearly habitable. Oh, it's habitable for humans, Dr. Nari agreed, but only because we evolved here. Captain, Earth's gravity is considered high by galactic standards. Our atmospheric oxygen concentration is so high that it's essentially a fire hazard. We have active volcanic systems, unstable tectonic plates, and weather patterns that include storms with winds over 300 kilometers per hour. Communications Officer Yuna looked confused. But your entertainment broadcasts show peaceful activities and comfortable living. Colonel Inha laughed, which was apparently a human expression of amusement rather than aggression. Those are our relaxation activities. Want to see what we do for excitement? The Colonel activated another display showing human extreme sports. Humans jumping from aircraft, climbing sheer cliff faces, racing vehicles at incredible speeds, and engaging in full-contact combat sports. These are your entertainment activities? Cultural analyst Sora asked in disbelief. Some of them, Colonel Inha confirmed. We also have activities like deep-sea diving, volcano exploration, and competitive martial arts. Captain Minho was struggling to process this information. But if Earth is a death world, how did your species develop such peaceful entertainment? And advanced technology? Ambassador Dongmin smiled. Captain, those peaceful entertainment programs you intercepted? Many of them are actually our war stories and military documentaries. Dr. Nari brought up human military history on the display. We've been engaged in almost continuous warfare throughout our recorded history. Not just conflicts over resources, but total wars involving entire civilizations. Total wars? Yuna asked. Wars where every member of society contributes to the military effort, Colonel Inha explained. Wars that continue until one side is completely defeated or destroyed. The Kethvar delegation sat in stunned silence as the humans explained their history. World wars that killed millions, weapons capable of destroying cities, conflicts that lasted for decades with no consideration of casualties. Captain, Ambassador Dongmin said gently, when your probe first approached our system, our scientists were excited. We've been hoping to meet other species who might understand what it's like to evolve on a death world. You wanted to meet other death world species? We assumed that any species capable of interstellar travel must have evolved on a challenging world, Dr. Nari explained. We thought you might be kindred spirits. Cultural analyst Sora finally found her voice. Ambassador, if humans evolved on a death world and have been fighting wars for thousands of years, why did you respond to our probe with peaceful communications? Because we've learned that war should be the last option, not the first, Colonel Inha replied. We've seen what happens when conflicts escalate beyond control. We prefer to talk before we fight. But if talking fails? Captain Minho asked. Then we fight with everything we have until we win, the Colonel answered simply. Captain Minho looked at his fellow officers and saw his own realization reflected in their expressions. The humans weren't soft worlders pretending to be strong. They were deathworlders pretending to be peaceful. "Captain," Ambassador Dongmin said, "our intelligence analysis suggests that Vorthak Prime is also a deathworld, though different from Earth. We believe our species might have more in common than you initially thought." "How so?" "You evolved strength and natural weapons on a world that demanded physical superiority. We evolved intelligence and cooperation on a world that demanded tactical thinking and teamwork. Both paths led to successful interstellar civilizations." Dr. Nari added, "We'd like to propose a cultural exchange program. Kethvar warriors could train with human special forces, while human scientists could study Kethvar biotechnology and evolution." "You want our warriors to train with your military?" Yuna asked. "We think both sides could learn valuable techniques," Colonel Inha said. "Your people have physical advantages we lack. Our people have tactical approaches you might find interesting." Captain Minho considered the proposal. Everything he had learned about humans suggested they were far more dangerous than any species the Kethvar had previously encountered. But they were also offering partnership instead of demanding submission. "I will need to discuss this with my superiors," he said finally. "Of course," Ambassador Dongmin replied. "But Captain, there's one more thing you should know." "What?" "Those miners who fought off your strike force? They weren't military personnel. They were civilian contractors with industrial equipment." The silence that followed this revelation lasted for several minutes. "If your civilians can defeat our warriors," Captain Minho said slowly, "what can your actual military do?" Colonel Inha's smile was neither threatening nor boastful, just confident. "Captain, I hope we never have to find out." 6 months after first contact, the joint training facility on Titan represented something unprecedented in galactic history. 2 deathworld species working together instead of trying to conquer each other. Commander Jackson, who had initially demanded immediate invasion of human space, now found himself leading a mixed unit of Kethvar warriors and human marines through a simulation that would have killed most other species. The artificial environment replicated conditions even harsher than either homeworld, with crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, and mechanical predators designed to test every survival skill both species had developed. "Contact left," announced Sergeant Hyan, a human marine who had volunteered for the exchange program. His environmental suit was barely holding together after 3 hours in the simulation, but he continued to move with the fluid precision that had impressed all the Kethvar observers. Jackson responded immediately, his natural armor allowing him to move through the hostile environment without the bulky protective gear the humans required. But what continued to amaze him was how effectively the humans fought despite their obvious physical disadvantages. "Target neutralized," reported Kethvar warrior Suman, who had adapted quickly to human tactical coordination methods. "These tactical formations are more efficient than our traditional approaches." The exercise concluded with both teams successfully completing objectives that would have challenged either species individually. As they gathered in the debriefing room, the mutual respect between former enemies was obvious to everyone present. Admiral Hyan watched the proceedings from the observation deck with Dr. Nari and Captain Minho, who had transitioned from military reconnaissance to heading the scientific exchange program. "The results exceed our most optimistic projections," Dr. Nari reported. "Kethvar physical capabilities combined with human tactical flexibility create combat effectiveness far superior to either species alone. More importantly," Captain Minho added, Both species are learning that strength takes many forms. My people are beginning to understand that intelligence and cooperation can be as valuable as natural armor and claws. Admiral Hyon nodded with satisfaction. And our people are learning that there's more than one way to be tough. The Kethvar approach to direct confrontation has already improved our close-quarters combat training. In the research laboratories on the other side of the facility, Dr. Sora worked alongside Kethvar scientist Taiho on projects that benefited both civilizations. Human technological innovation combined with Kethvar biological expertise was producing breakthroughs in medicine, materials science, and biotechnology. The regenerative properties of Kethvar armor plating could revolutionize human medical treatment, Dr. Sora explained to her human colleagues. Combined with our understanding of cellular engineering, we might be able to help humans develop limited regenerative abilities. Taiho added his own perspective. Human energy generation and gravitational manipulation technologies are allowing us to explore scientific theories that were previously impossible to test. The gravitational wave communicators alone have advanced our physics by decades. The success of the programs had convinced both governments to expand the partnership. Earth's orbital shipyards now incorporated Kethvar biotechnology, while Vorthak, Prime's military academies taught human tactical doctrines alongside traditional Kethvar combat methods. But the most significant development was still to come. Long-range sensors had detected signals from a previously unknown sector of the galaxy. The transmission suggested another advanced civilization, but one that seemed even more aggressive than the Kethvar had been before meeting humans. In the Joint Command Center, Admiral Hyon and War Chief Yuna studied the intelligence reports together. The new species, calling themselves the Nexari, had been systematically conquering worlds throughout their region of space. Their technology appeared to be roughly equivalent to human or Kethvar capabilities, but their approach to conquest was brutal even by Kethvar standards. They don't just conquer worlds, War Chief Yuna observed. They strip them of all resources and leave the planets uninhabitable. Even we have never been that destructive. The pattern suggests they're moving in this direction, Admiral Hyon added. Long-range projections indicate they'll reach the border between our territories within 2 years. Ambassador Dongmin, who had become the primary liaison between human and Kethvar governments, reviewed the tactical assessments. Both our species could probably handle the Nexari individually, but the cost would be enormous. Together we could stop them with minimal casualties. A joint military operation? War Chief Yuna asked. More than that, Admiral Hyon replied. A permanent alliance, Earth and Vorthak Prime standing together against threats to both our civilizations. The formal alliance treaty was signed 3 weeks later in a ceremony broadcast throughout both star systems. For the first time in Kethvar history, they had allied with another species as equals, rather than conquering them as subjects. Commander Jackson, now leading the Joint Special Forces Division, stood at attention as the treaty was signed. 6 months earlier, he had been planning to invade human space. Now he couldn't imagine facing the galaxy's challenges without human allies beside him. The first test of the alliance came sooner than expected. A Nexari scout fleet probed the outer edges of human space, apparently testing defenses before a larger invasion force arrived. Captain Ariam, now commanding a mixed human Kethvar crew aboard the joint patrol ship Terra Vorthak, intercepted the enemy scouts near Pluto's orbit. Nexari vessels, this is Captain Ariam of the Earth-Vorthak Alliance, she broadcast on open channels. You are violating Alliance space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The Nexari response was immediate. and hostile. 3 ships opened fire without warning, apparently expecting easy victory over what they assumed was a single patrol vessel. They were not prepared for what followed. The Terra Vorthak responded with human weapons and Kethvar tactics, while its crew combined the best of both species' combat capabilities. Human precision targeting guided Kethvar assault troops in boarding actions, while Kethvar strength and durability supported human technical specialists in damage control. The engagement lasted less than an hour. 2 Nexari ships were captured intact, while the third escaped to report that this sector of space was defended by an unknown alliance of dangerous species. In the aftermath, as Captain Arium surveyed the captured enemy vessels, she reflected on how much had changed since first contact. The humans and Kethvar had gone from potential enemies to trusted allies in less than a year. "Captain," her Kethvar first officer reported, "analysis of the enemy ships confirms our intelligence estimates. The Nexari are powerful, but not invincible." "Good. Send word to Admiral Hyon and War Chief Yuna. Tell them the Alliance is ready for whatever comes next." 6 months later, the joint exploration vessel Friendship launched on its maiden voyage to investigate reports of even more dangerous worlds in the galactic core. The crew was eager to discover what other deathworld species might be waiting to join their alliance. Commander Sora, now leading the mixed exploration team, stood on the bridge as they prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel. "Destination confirmed," announced her human navigator. "The Inferno systems. Preliminary scans suggest worlds that make Earth and Vorthak Prime look comfortable." "Perfect," replied Kethvar warrior Jehoon with something that might have been a grin. Finally, some real challenge. As the ship disappeared into hyperspace, carrying representatives of 2 deathworld species in search of others like them, the alliance between Earth and Vorthak Prime continued to grow stronger. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of opportunities for those brave enough to face them. And if there was one thing that both humans and Kethvar had learned, it was that the greatest challenges produced the strongest alliances. The age of conquest was ending. The age of cooperation between deathworld species had begun. Behind them, in the space around Earth and Vorthak Prime, joint patrol fleets stood ready to defend both worlds against any threat. Human ingenuity and Kethvar strength combined into something greater than either could achieve alone. The universe was about to learn what happened when deathworld species worked together instead of fighting each other.